Investigators were jubilant, thinking they'd found the deer they had just shot. But what they find is a human body, nude, dismembered, missing its head, hands, and legs. This is the story of an unbelievable cold-blooded crime. Lies so deliberate, deception so calculated, betraying the trust of those closest, and exposing a truth no one could have imagined.
I'm pretty sure they'll want to talk to you, dude. All right, but we'll let y'all know the final result. All right, thank y'all so much. Y'all be careful. Yes, sir.
In the days that follow, more remains surface. A leg, then another, scattered across the forest.
Well, it looks like there's been animal stuff around it.
I didn't know if it was fake or dummy, but I see hair, body hair. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when I saw that body hair on the, I don't know, but it looked like a female almost.
It does. It does look like a female.
On the fifth day, investigators uncover something even more disturbing. The head, buried underground, all within a 3-mile radius. A knife, blood-stained plastic tubs, and cleaning wipes were also found at the site. Agents collected DNA from the remains. The results were clear. All the remains belonged to a single female. There were no missing person cases in the area, not even in nearby counties. Investigators released a forensic sketch. A few tips came in, but none brought them any closer. On January 5th, 2023, another forensic sketch was released. Investigators intensified the public appeal with both sketches. All possible news outlets and even social media platforms were used.
Seeking the public's help identifying a woman who was found dismembered. Take a good look at your screen. This is what the woman may have looked like. Her remains were discovered off Jones Road in the woods of the Portal Hunting Club in Riceboro, as well as within a 3-mile radius on the hunting club property in Liberty and McIntosh.
The image circulated again and again, yet the identity of the unknown woman remained hidden until a woman named Heather Thomas finally identified the sketch. She said the woman in the sketch was married to her ex-husband, and her name was Mindi Kassotis.
The Compelling Women podcast is written and hosted by me, Mindi Kassotis. Thank you so much for listening to the first season, and I promise to be back with another season as soon as I can.
Mindi hosted the Compelling Women podcast, a show dedicated to elevating women's stories and perspectives. Through thoughtful interviews and heartfelt conversations, she sought to connect and inspire women. She was a voice for others. She was married to Nicholas Kassotis, a former Navy officer, and maintained friendships with people she fully trusted. Mindi and Nicholas lived in Savannah, Georgia, in a quiet neighborhood near the water, surrounded by forests and marshes. Friends described her as caring, lively, and deeply connected to those around her. She had a close circle of friends who shared in her passions and daily life. Among them were Morgan Paddock and Angela Wynn. Despite all this, the couple's life took a dramatic turn in 2022. They began moving frequently from place to place, sometimes on just days' notice, and Mindi increasingly pulled away from her close friends. She told them about threats, unexplained incidents, and a growing sense that she and Nicholas were not safe.
Nick was involved in some sort of software development, and that when it sold, it was going to be for a large sum of money, and it was life-changing money. There were dangerous people that were after her and Nick, And
During the second half of 2022, life for Mindi became increasingly complicated, something that looked like fear taking over her life.
There was a security team that she always talked about Nick talking to the security team, and the security team told Nick. She told me that they had to have video surveillance van outside down the street. Nick could never leave the house without a security detail with him. They had to have, there were often meetings with the security team to just talk about their safety and what the protocols were.
Just after November 24th, 2022, Angela Wynn received a call from Nick Kassotis and began hearing a story no one could have anticipated. He said Mindi had died suddenly from a medical issue and had already been cremated.
He was crying. He said that Mindi was gone, that he didn't know what happened. He apologized, saying he wished he could have protected her more, and that he was so sorry for her not being here anymore.
Angela was stunned. The story was shocking, almost impossible to believe. Nick said there had been no funeral, no memorial, no further explanation for what had happened.
He said that they would perform tests over the weekend, and he would let me know as soon as he heard something. He called me that Monday to tell me that she had passed because of a massive stroke that he said was hereditary on her father's side. No funeral arrangements. I asked him every single time I talked to him if he needed help with any type of arrangements or if I needed to come down to be with him to help him with things.
Meanwhile, Heather Thomas, Nick's ex-wife, learned about Mindi's death from someone else entirely. An acquaintance of Nick's texted Heather with a simple but chilling message, claiming she had died in a hospital. Heather was horrified. She didn't know the sender well, and at first she didn't know whether to believe it or not. To take the confusion to a new level, Mindi's parents, who lived just 20 miles from Mindi and Nick's Savannah home, received an email that seemed to come from Nick's security team, stating that Nick had been seriously injured in a car crash and remained in critical condition.
In February, we were notified by his security team that he had been in a car accident and wasn't in very good shape, and we asked if we would be allowed to come and see him. Several weeks later, we were told that unfortunately he had died.
With Mindi's remains finally identified, investigators thought they were making progress. But the breakthrough came with a chilling twist. Her husband, Nick Kassotis, was also nowhere to be found. Nick's name and information were circulated nationwide. Detectives combed through friends, family, and acquaintances, piecing together his last known movements. Phone records, emails, and financial activity were scrutinized for any trace. Meanwhile, the home the couple had last lived was meticulously examined for any clue. Days turned into weeks, and the search for the missing husband stretched into months. Then investigators uncovered a startling revelation. Nick Kassotis is living under a new identity, Nicholas Killian James Stark, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with a new partner presenting himself as a widower. And finally, on May 12th, 2023, Nicholas Kassotis was located and taken into custody. When investigators finally sat down with Nick Kassotis, they were looking for clarity. The question was simple: what happened to Mindi?
Like if you went to this doctor's office in strip on Savannah where your wife, you were told your wife had died, you would really remember that. There would be no doubt. The other thing is, if that happened and you were not allowed to see your wife and found out she was cremated later, you don't think as an attorney that every attorney hearing this would file suit against that doctor?
Yes, sir. I thought she died of natural causes. That's what I
But they made mistakes, is what you're telling me. They made mistakes and cremated her, and you ended up meeting someone on the side of the road. Every portion of your life and everything that's coming down is coming down right now to Mindy ends up being untrue. But you want me to believe that portion is true. You lied about going to the doctor's office.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You lied about going to the doctor's office. As for you, you lied about picking up her remains on the side of the road.
Yes, sir.
You lied about where your vehicle went that day.
Yes.
And where you got you lied about.
Nick, however, remained composed. He told them that Mindy's death had been sudden, the result of a medical emergency. According to him, she had been taken to a clinic where she died shortly afterward, suggesting something like a stroke, and that her body had been cremated soon after. But as investigators pressed for details, the story began to lose its shape. He couldn't provide the name of the clinic, couldn't identify the doctor, and offered no records or evidence to support what he was saying. The more he spoke, the more the gaps widened. What he presented as an explanation was no longer just incomplete. It stood in direct contradiction to the evidence. When investigators confronted Nick Kassotis with the confirmed DNA evidence, the dismembered body parts of Mindy found in the woods, he remained steadfast. Despite the undeniable proof, Nick stuck to his story, insisting that he had no knowledge of how it had happened. As the questioning continued, Nick Kassotis began to describe a situation that had been unfolding long before Mindy's disappearance. Months before Mindy's disappearance, Nick said they felt as if they were being monitored and followed, both digitally and physically. Financial accounts showed transactions that shouldn't have existed. Emails appeared read when they hadn't been opened. Phone calls arrived with no one on the line, or background noise suggested someone was listening. A quiet, creeping unease settled into daily life. The persistent sensation that someone was always watching. Things took a dramatic turn when a stranger named Jim McIntyre showed up unexpectedly, presenting himself as someone with access and authority from within powerful circles, a figure who claimed to understand the threats they were facing. Nick described Jim as someone with connections, someone who seemed to operate within the system, possibly tied to federal authorities. He said this man had reached out to them, offering guidance in what he believed was a dangerous situation. Over time, Nick claimed their lives began to change under Jim's control. They became more cautious. They limited communication. Instructions were followed: when to speak, when to stay silent, who to trust, and who not to. To Nick, this wasn't confusion or fear. He believed they were being protected. But as investigators dug deeper, that story began to collapse. There was no record of such an agent, no evidence of any investigation, no sign that anyone named Jim had ever been involved in their lives. What Nick presented as a shadowy connection to federal authorities was, in reality, just another piece of a story that could not be verified. Among the items found near her remains was a distinctive Milwaukee knife, orange-handled and black-sheathed. Reviewing surveillance footage from a local Home Depot store, detectives saw a familiar figure, Nicholas Kassotis, paying for that very same model of knife. A few days earlier, he had also been recorded paying for a shovel at another store. Nick had been driving a green Ford Explorer while living with Mindy in Savannah. Then a piece of evidence emerged that would prove pivotal. On the way to the woods in Riceboro, there was a water pump station with a CCTV camera facing the road. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage from the days surrounding the incident, tracking any vehicles that traveled toward the wooded area. One vehicle, a Ford Explorer, drew particular attention. On November 29, 2022, it was seen heading toward the woods at 11:16 a.m. Less than an hour later, the same vehicle was captured again, this time returning from the area. Digital signal pings, combined with the vehicle's systems, confirmed that the vehicle captured on camera was not just any similar model, but the Ford Explorer belonging to Nick. When questioned, Nick once again brought Jim McIntyre into the narrative. He claimed that on the morning of November 29th, he was simply following instructions from his so-called security team. According to Nick, he had been told to pack his and Mindy's belongings into large plastic totes in preparation for yet another sudden move out of Savannah. One of more than 50 relocations the couple had made over 3 years, all under Jim's direction. He said he was given GPS coordinates and instructed to deliver the containers to a specific location. When he arrived at what he described as a house, Nick claimed he was met by an unknown red-haired man. He stated that he unloaded the totes from his vehicle and left them there, trusting the man's assurance that he would handle the rest. When pressed by investigators, Nick firmly denied any wrongdoing, maintaining that the plastic totes held only personal belongings, not the dismembered remains of his wife. Meanwhile, the home where the couple had last lived was carefully searched for any clues. Investigators found a large stain on the fabric of the futon, even visible to the naked eye. When the fabric was removed, it showed that the blood had soaked into the mattress. Later testing confirmed that it was a match to Mindy's blood. As luminol testing began, faint areas started to glow, revealing blood stains that were not visible to the naked eye, even on the walls, indicating the intensity of the horror Mindy had gone through. When Nick was confronted with the blood stains, he said he had no knowledge of how they got there. Nick was a trained lawyer and a former JAG officer in the U.S. Navy. Later, he left the Navy and practiced law. Nick's first marriage was to Heather Thomas, and the two were together for 6 years. He was deeply determined to have children, but Heather struggled with a medical condition that made it difficult for her to conceive. Over time, that reality began to weigh heavily on their relationship. As the years passed, the marriage grew increasingly strained, and eventually they separated, without ever having children. The end of the marriage was far from simple. As part of the divorce settlement, the court ordered Nicholas to pay Heather $1.5 million. The impact of that marriage, both emotionally and financially, would follow him into the next chapter of his life. After divorcing Heather in 2015, he stepped into his second marriage with Mindy in 2016, moving quickly within just 1 year. Nicholas did not pay the settlement to Heather. In the months and years that followed, Heather took legal action to enforce the court's order. What was supposed to be a final settlement turned into a years-long legal fight as she continued trying to get the money she was owed. In 2022, Nicholas began moving from place to place. He seemed determined to stay out of reach, away from Heather, and hidden from the obligation to pay what he owed. To justify his constant escape, he built a story. He spoke of being watched, of a looming threat closing in on him, bringing in Jim and a so-called security team to give shape to something that had not been there at all. The last place the couple lived in Savannah, Georgia, was an Airbnb rental house, about an hour and a half's drive from where Mindy's remains were later found. Nicholas had always wanted children, something he couldn't have in his first marriage. He hoped things would be different with Mindy, but even after nearly 6 years together, it still hadn't happened. Over time, that began to weigh on their relationship. Then, finally, came a moment that seemed to change everything. Mindy told him she was pregnant, and Nicholas was overjoyed. Mindy shared the news of her pregnancy with her friends and her parents, and everyone was overjoyed. After years of waiting, it finally felt like everything was falling into place. For a while, life seemed lighter, and a few joyful months unfolded for the couple, filled with hope and anticipation. But she was not actually pregnant. Perhaps under pressure from Nicholas, she pretended. The happiness didn't last long. Nicholas soon learned that Mindy had lied about being pregnant. His long-held dream of having a child, one that had already been broken in his marriage with Heather, now seemed to collapse once again before his eyes. He was furious and struggled to accept what he had learned. His hope was slipping away, leaving behind frustration, anger, and a sense of loss he could not bear. Mindy's parents lived just a mile away from her Savannah home, but they had left for a weekend trip. The perfect moment for Nicholas to act on his burning desire for revenge soon arrived. Burning with hatred, Nick approached Mindy and began attacking her. Mindy, with no help in sight, attempted to escape, but she stood no chance. He struck her head 9 times until his revenge was satisfied, and then he stabbed her in the abdomen, his eyes burning. He then dismembered her body and placed the body parts into the plastic tubs. Within a few minutes, the horror inside the Savannah home was over. Nick, weighed down by guilt, began a deep cleaning of the floors and walls. With the credibility he carried from his profession, many believed what he said. Even Mindy's parents did not go so far as to doubt Nick, and instead grieved the loss of their daughter. The case against Mindi Kassotis went to trial in Liberty County, Georgia. Over the course of the proceedings, court heard detailed testimony from investigators, forensic experts, and witnesses, along with evidence that painted a complex and disturbing picture of events. After deliberation, the jury reached a verdict on August 14th, 2025, finding Mindi Kassotis guilty on multiple charges.
In the Superior Court of Liberty County, State of Georgia, case number 2024R-67, State of Georgia versus Nicholas James Kassotis. Count 1, malice murder, guilty. Count 2, felony murder, guilty. Count 3, aggravated assault, guilty. Count 4, concealing death of another, guilty. Count 5, possession of a knife during the commission of a felony, guilty. Count 6, possession of a tool for the commission of a crime, guilty. Count 7.
Kassotis was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, along with an additional 25 years. The sentence brought the trial to a close, marking the end of one of the most closely followed cases in the region. This story reminds us how deeply deception can exist, even among those closest to us. It shows how events can happen quietly, behind closed doors, without anyone noticing until it's too late. It also reminds us of something important: to stay connected with the people we care about, to notice the small signs, and to never ignore a feeling when something doesn't seem right. This story is dedicated to Mindi Kassotis. Her life was taken far too soon. She should be remembered for who she was, not just what happened to her. She tried to stand up for those who did not have a voice, and her memory deserves to be honored with respect, dignity, and care.
The Compelling Women podcast is written and hosted by me, Mindi Kassotis. Thank you so much for listening to the first season, and I promise to be back with another season as soon as I can.